Well, hello everyone. I'm re-recording this because I was so sick last night when I actually did the webinar. So I thought, no, I was all over the place. Let me just start again and do it over. So welcome to everyone, and we are really, really very glad that you are here. And if you are joining us here, chances are, because you looked at the topic of the webinar, the workshop, that your reading time in your home doesn't look and feel the way you hoped it would. So it's sometimes so confusing because you see your child that they can read fluently, they can sound, right? But as soon as you ask them, okay, tell me back, what did you read? It's a blur. They can't remember. Okay. And you know your child is very smart. You see them practicing, you see them trying, right? But homework takes forever. And sometimes it ends in frustration and in tears. So today it's not about blaming your child, looking for ways to show that they're not trying, okay? Today is about helping to understand how reading and the brain works. And at this stage, I just want to clarify that we are not talking about anything specific like dyslexia or anything like that. This is just an information workshop webinar where we share with you what the brain needs in actual fact to be able to be fluent in reading, comprehend, and all of that. So let's start. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Karen Visser, and there on the picture you can see my sister Marlies, and I'm the founder and co-owner of BioLink. Marlies joined me about 14 years ago. So we are the proud owners of BioLink, and we really, really enjoy our business because we give hope. We try our best to share information that can help parents and teachers. But I want to start with a little bit of a personal note because I've walked this path. I know how you feel. My oldest son, and that's why BioLink actually started, and that's the origin of BioLink, was when he was diagnosed with ADHD and in grade 1 and with autism in grade 3. And the road was very long and very hard. He's 26 years old, and a lot of our challenges was overcame, but there's still, I mean, if you've got an autistic child, every chapter of their lives comes with different challenges. But I'm coming here tonight or today to share with you from a place to say that I understand how it feels. I understand if you sit for hours and try your best and you think that, okay, this is going to work, and then it just ends in fights, it ends in tears, and I want to give you hope. Okay. We understand. We absolutely understand. And for the 18 years that we've been dealing and working with parents and teachers, we've seen many stories, and we've also seen many, many success stories. All right. So let's start with this clip. So I want you to take in a moment and read on the screen, and let's see if this sounds familiar. Okay. So maybe your child reads beautifully, right? But they can't tell you what they read. We already said that. Okay. Maybe they lose their place constantly. Okay. So they read and they miss stuff, or they skip a line. Okay. And then this reading turns into shutdown and resistance. And I know a lot of parents are struggling with this challenge. And somewhere along the line, you have heard the words, they just need to practice more. Okay. So here is something that's very important to hear. If reading was just about practicing, more reading would have fixed all of this. So clearly, there is something else that we need to identify. So reading, you see on the screen, I talk about it's a brain task. Okay, reading isn't just about recognizing letters and sounds, right? Your child's brain has to hold words, hold the meaning, remember the word that came before it, follow along with the story, ignore distractions, and keep going all at the same time. And that's a lot. So, and the system that holds all of this that I just named together is called working memory. So, in my live webinar last night, I actually asked specifically the teachers, do you know what working memory is? And I am also a retired former teacher, and we were never taught this. Teachers are not taught about the brain and how the brain functions, yet we have to teach children that are so diversified and different, right? So understanding the origin of challenges is so very important. And one of these are called working memory. So it's the brain's holding space. That's an easy way to understand that. So let me give you an example, a practical example. So imagine your child is reading the following sentence. The brown dog ran quickly across the muddy field, chasing a red ball. So now to understand the sentence, their brain, remember information is coming in through the eyes and the ears, and the brain has to now remember who we are talking about, remember what the dog is going to do, where it's going to happen, and connect it all and keep moving to the next sentence, all without dropping any pieces. Another example how I explain working memory is to see it like a juggler juggling 4 balls easily, right? But if you sometimes maybe will give him that 5th ball, the balls are going to drop, okay, if the capacity cannot be met. So working memory is what holds the pieces long enough to make sense of it. Another practical example, and I did this in the live webinar. I gave this example: 5 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 5. Okay, so give me the answer. So what does the brain do? It takes the 5, it adds the 2, that's 7, it holds it together. Then it takes a 3, adds that, and now I have to remember there was a 5. Oh, and another 5. So there's a string of actions that takes place, and the brain needs the capacity to hold on to those different instructions. Okay. So if we look at today's children, okay, kids today are carrying a lot of cognitive load. There's a lot happening every day during school and also in the afternoons at home. And we talk about cognitive overload, okay? So the school pace is so much faster. Constant screens, I mean, that's our biggest, I think, challenge these days. There's a lot of noise happening. They have to multitask. And then also the emotional pressure that comes with this. And then, of course, less movement and less sleep, okay? And I want you to know that when a child or a person cannot hold on to information, as I gave you that example now, they look distracted, oppositional. They also look unmotivated. Okay, but what is happening is cognitive capacity collapse. So when we can build the capacity, the behavior that we see is going to change. And I'll show you an example just now. Then reading is going to change. Their confidence is going to change. Okay, so working memory is the first system to collapse when there's a lot of stress and a lot of things happening around us. So that's why parents will say he knows the work at home, but as soon as he goes to school, it's gone. Okay, so it's not the fact that they've got an attitude problem. It's showing us that the brain is absolutely overloaded. All right. So the main message that I want to bring forward today in this workshop is that working memory is a higher cognitive skill, but it doesn't work alone. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you how we at BioLink illustrate and showcase this to people. Is that it doesn't work alone. It's not isolated skills. They all work together. I like to use the example of, if we look at a brain, you look at different gears, and these gears are turning. And if one of these different gears are stuck, it has an impact on other gears, other brain skills. Okay, so if we look at the fact that reading doesn't only rely on working memory, it relies on attention, it relies on processing speed, it relies on visual tracking. Visual tracking is the skill. If you struggle, if your skill is not well developed, that's when you skip lines. Then that's when you read over things. Okay, and then most of all, emotional control. So when one of these skills are weak, the brain is taking a knock, and then it shows up in a child's behavior. Not because the children are difficult or oppositional, as we said, but the brain, our brains becomes so overwhelmed. So the next slide, I want to show you how we illustrate at BioLink this, because we work specifically on cognitive and higher cognitive skills. So our cognitive skills, and as you can see on the screen, our executive functionings, right? So if we look at cognitive skills, this is the root causes of a lot of behavioral challenges. So we look at this tree and we look at all the beautiful flowers and all the beautiful stuff at the top. We want the children and we want people to be able to execute tasks, right? So if we look at a classroom or if we look at our children at home, we see them struggle with certain things. So we see struggles in the form of behaviors. I always like to say that behavior is a communication tool. Somewhere along the line in my body, I'm struggling and it will be showcased to the outside world as behavior. So if we look at what we want a person, whether it's a child or adult, what we want to be able to do to execute tasks, to finish tasks, right? Is to be able to pay attention, to sit still, to be able to problem solve, to listen, to read, to think, okay, to remember, okay? So these are the beautiful things at the top. But we need to ask ourselves the question, but what is the root cause of where it actually starts, where it origins from? So, and this is the answer. It's our cognitive skills, right? So that's the brain skills. And we are born with certain amount with brain skills, but as we are exposed in this world, how we grow up as babies, the things that our parents expose us to, give us access to, is going to develop those skills. And we know that children today is growing up in a total different world. My oldest two boys are 26 and 24. And then I've got a little lad, Lamiki, that's 12 years old. There was a whole 12-year gap between my second and my third child. And I could see the difference in parents, the difference in teaching, the difference in children, the difference in parenting when I had him. And thank God I had the knowledge that I had because I'm full-blown ADHD, so is my husband and all of our kids. And the fact that I struggled so much when I didn't have the knowledge helped me so much when I had him, because I could start and work on all the things that I knew played a role. And I'm not bragging, I am just telling you, is that I parented him different. The way I helped him in school was different. I developed all his cognitive skills. He's now in grade 8, but he's been independent from me, from helping him with schoolwork or anything, from grade 4, because I started in grade 1 already, developing all of these cognitive skills that you see here at the bottom, because I had the knowledge. And that's why we really want to help and teach parents and teachers about this, because you can change the outcome. So I used an example yet last night as well, where I talked about they talk about there's like 7 types of attentions or concentration, let's call it factors, but we talk about 3. So you have sustained attention, we have selective attention, and we have divided attention. So last night, again, I asked the teachers specifically if they knew that. There was one teacher that knew about selective attention. So in a classroom, for instance, and even at home, if we look at sustained attention, that's our attention span, right? Starting a task, completing a task without any interruptions, and being in the here and the now for that amount of time. So my attention span. Selective attention is where I am able to pay attention, let's say to a teacher in the class, while I'm hearing that the lawnmower is going outside and my friend behind me is actually sharpening his pencil. So if you are not be able to be aware of it, but also filter it, those students are going to look away. They are going to be distracted. And a teacher or a mom is going to say, listen, stop, you have to concentrate, right? And then the third one is our divided attention, where we are actually able to multitask. So in classroom, being able to listen to the teacher and write down. It's a skill, guys, and children can't do that. That's why in our one of our programs, our transferring programs, this is what we actually teach our kids, is to be able to multitask, to develop that divided attention from a much younger age. We only started doing that when we studied at university. Okay, so these are the different cognitive skills. And if they are well developed, we will now go to our higher functioning cognitive skills, also known as our executive functioning skills. And this is where we are able to be able to plan, prioritize, time management, okay, self-monitoring, being able to know where I am, self-regulation, okay, that's where working memory comes in, okay, organization, impulse control. And if I look at this is not only when we talk about life. I sit here in my office and I'm going to plan my day, I'm going to manage my time, I'm going to be able to organize everything that I have to do. If a child goes sits in front of an exam paper, he needs to look at the exam paper and he's going to use all of these executive functioning skills on that level as well, because they have to look at the paper, right? They have to look at how many marks this is, how much time do I have, what am I going to do first? Am I going to be able to, when I get nervous and don't have emotional control, be able to have impulse control and complete it? Don't get nervous. So we don't use this executive functioning skills only in normal life day to day. We use it in actual activities that we do also, right? Now, also, the fact is I can teach someone to be more organized, right? But if the core cognitive skills are not well developed, I'm still going to struggle. So if my attention are not good, okay, if my processing speed is going to be slow, I'm going to struggle with organization. So no need now to teach someone how to organize if the core cognitive skills are not well developed. We are going to struggle here, and then we are going to struggle to execute at the top. Now, very important is processing speed. Is that processing speed is as information are coming in through the eyes and the ears, and the brain is ability to have the time to process what needs to happen. And do you remember in the example that I had just now, where there's multiple step directions, right? If your processing speed are too slow, you are going to have a collapse. So let me give you another example of processing speed in the classroom and at home. So at home, you will send your child to the room, tell them to get your handbag, get a R5 and give it to dad. And I explicitly last night asked, how many kids comes back? No, they get lost, they forget. In classrooms, teachers are going to say, I want you to take out your math books, go to chapter 3, start with question 1, and remember to write down the date for today. And it sounds very simple, but there's a lot of cognitive skills that's going into that that sounds like one simple task. That goes into that. Now, the fact is that if your processing speed are delayed, or you're struggling with low processing speed, the outcome is going to be weak working memory. And like we said now, working memory is a lot, because working memory is where we have to hold all of that information together. So the two most prominent places where we see lack of working memory is if children struggle with reading and with mathematics, because it steps, okay, and the capacity to hold on to all of that information as illustrated, okay. So let's move on. I hope this makes sense to you guys, okay. So I want you to know that if a child is struggling and we get this pushback, it's not because they are lazy, okay? The brain is overloaded. And when we build the brain skills underneath the reading is going to improve. So I want to give you some tips because in the end, we have to improve the skills. That's the bottom line. But what can you do now to help these children, even adults, that's got a working memory challenge, right? Is remember, there's lots of steps, okay? So what you can do is to make everything that you are giving them, make the words visible. An example that I like to use, let's say, for instance, in a classroom, there's a certain procedure for handing in homework, for instance, right? A child that's got a working memory deficit is going to forget. So how you can help that student is to have something on the board or on a poster with a procedure in steps that they can check. The more they do it, the more it's going to become second habit because that's how the brain works and the brain learns. But you're going to help and take some of that pressure away from the child. And also to break down tasks. Remember, if you say go do your homework, it sounds like one thing, but it's a lot. That child doesn't know where to start. They cannot start, right? So rather than say, okay, go to your room, go do maths and start with question 1. That sounds doable, that they can do. Okay, so that works very, very well. And then you can try and slow things down a little bit. But I know in today's fast-paced world, this is just unbearable. Okay, but if a child has got a processing challenge, right? And you are telling them, come on, do this. You know what happens? They have anxiety. They go into that state of mind of flight, fight, or freeze, right? And then what happens? They cannot do anything. I always say when you get in that state of mind, I can't read, I can't see, I can't talk because I'm totally overloaded. So if you do that, and then the behavior that you are going to see when you rush a person that's a slow processor, so you're going to see an impulsive student. I have to share with you the story, and I'm going to illustrate to you how we came about getting the answer. The family that lives next door to us, she phoned me one time and she said that everyone at school is saying that her son is so impulsive and she doesn't know what to do. And he was in around about, I would say, grade 5 at that stage. And I said to her, listen, but you are giving me all of this information. Let's look at getting to the answers. And I'm going to get to that just now. And the outcome of that was, it was totally, what was absorbed was absolutely, not absorbed, what observed was absolutely wrong. Okay. So I'm going to get back to that one. It's going to go into the next slide. All right. And then again, like I said, you can use visuals. Okay. You can make them, give them checklists. Okay. Give them lists. It helps. And then lastly, take away the distractions. That means quiet space, telephone away. We always joke and say, go put it in the freezer, television off. Not forever, okay? Just while the brain is working at this specific task. Okay. Now, again, back to my story, is that we were getting all of this feedback and all of this information about our son, trying to get to know what is wrong. Sorry, guys, what is wrong and what can we do? Okay, let me just put this off. I'm so sorry. And we at one stage, and I always talk about this example. At one stage, there were 6 different reports on our dining room table. And when we looked at it, it looked like 6 different children because the OT is looking through the OT lens, the speech therapist is looking through their lenses. You've got all these different observations. And especially if you've got a child that's on the spectrum, you will know that most of them don't like people that they don't know. So if you now put them in a test situation, do you think you're going to get the real results, right? So we wanted to find an assessment that was objective and scientifically proven. And to get to answers where we can take a person, so a mom, a dad, a teacher, we could take them out of the equation. And I want to ask you, if you could have a clear answer or just maybe a starting point of understanding behavior, how would that make you feel, right? So we've created a computerized performance test, a CPT test called Focus. So Focus is a computer game, let's call it that they play. So there's no person involved, no bias, not subjective. And we measure the certain skill set that is going to explain behavior to us. And what's the wonderful thing about this assessment is it was developed in South Africa. Marlies and I actually launched this in 2017 at the American Psychology Association's World Conference in Washington, D.C. And we are very proud to say that this assessment is being used across the globe, giving us answers. Not all the answers, right? But giving us a certain starting point. And I always say, we want to understand if a child's struggling to do something, or they are hesitant, or we've got pushback. We want to understand, is it because they can't or they won't? There's a big difference. Unfortunately, a lot of students struggles for years where they actually are crying out for help through their behavior. And then this I can't will become a I won't. Okay, that we've struggled through as well when we work with our students in our centers. Okay, so I want to show you an assessment that can help us give a starting point. So here's the Focus assessment. Like I said, it's science-based, no guessing, no labels. Okay, it shows skills. And remember also, even if a skill is weak, we can improve that skill. So we've got an assessment process where we observe the student, we've got questionnaires that the parents and the teachers complete, and then we do our specific scientific assessment. And with this assessment, we measure 4 things. We measure attention, processing speed, impulse control, but then we added another one. We added what is the effect. So there's auditory and visual distractions incorporated in this assessment. So what is the effect of those distractions on a person's ability to be able to stay in the here and the now, to have attentional control, right? So as you can see on the screen here, we can measure same age, same gender, children or adults with each other. And we talk about constructs. I'm going to explain to you, just show you the 3 there at the front. So this is consistency is attention, right? Plain. So now the 20-minute assessment, no reading required, no mathematics. They just press a space bar when they see a certain thing, a star on the screen, right? But it gives us a world of knowledge. So for the instance, this student has got an attention span. So you can see we get a percentage there, 8%. So what we now can do, 8% of 20 minutes is not even 2 minutes, that this child's ability is to be able to be in the here and the now. It's not that they won't. This person, this child can't. So this child, especially if this, let's say this is a girl, they're very quiet in the class. So these children fall through the cracks, right? They have to work so much harder. Normally, we see a lot of girls only from grade 4 because when just like I think it's science, girls are more prominent in the first years. They want to please their teachers, they want to do their homework. So even if they are struggling, they get away with it, and also they're very bright. Boys is another thing. They don't want to be in school. They don't want to do this. So the behavior is more prominent from much earlier on. But these kids miss a lot. So we want that skill to go to the right-hand side. Look at processing speed. Look at how slowly this person is processing information, missing things. So we know, even though we don't assess working memory, we assess processing speed, and we know the outcome of a slow processor is weak working memory that will lead us to the fact that why the student may be struggling with reading. And like I said, most often they're not, also with mathematics. All right, so we want those scores to go to the right-hand side. What this student also struggles with, unfortunately, is impulse control. So this is the students that we think sometimes are very rude and they interrupt conversations. They struggle with friends because they are all over the place, okay? And again, guys, this is a skill, okay? So this assessment is a way for you to have a starting point to understand behavior a little bit better, right? Because in the end, and that was the reason for this webinar, is that if we look at reading, there's a lot of facets and areas that people are not looking for answers, right? And like I said, it all starts with the cognitive skills. And if you want to best help and assist your child, you need to understand what skill sets they are struggling with. And there are tools available out there where you can get your answers, right? So thank you for listening. If you look at watch the recording, please reach out to us if you have any questions, guys. And then it was lovely speaking to you, and we hope to see you in the next webinar.